So, hi guys, I want to talk to you today about what a high carb vegan eats. Well, it consists of two parts, high carb and vegan, so I'll start with the high carb part. Basically every food can be broken down into as containing three kind of parts: carbohydrates, protein and fat. And most of your calories want to be coming from carbohydrates on a high carb diet, of course. And there's kind of two categories of carbohydrates. So you have your simple carbs and you have your complex carbs. And simple carbs, most of that is going to be coming from fruit. So obviously, we know all the fruits. We've got all the watermelon, the bananas and the mangoes, and your apples and pears and all that kind of thing. Watermelon's a favourite for a lot of people because of the water content. It's good to be hydrated at all times, and so watermelon helps you do that, and it's delicious, of course. Bananas are also a particular favourite, a massive favourite among the high-carb vegan kind of community because they're quite calorific, so it helps you get your kind of calories up from fruit, and they're very cheap. They're really cheap, especially in the UK here, about 12p each or something like that you can buy them for in a big supermarket, so they're cheap. And mangoes are also a favourite because, again, they're quite calorific compared to other fruits. So tons of fruit is the way forward. The other thing is, so you've got your more complex carbohydrates. Sources of those are your potatoes, your yams and sweet potatoes. Yams and sweet potatoes, there is a difference, I'm not sure what it is, but anyway, there's rice, of course. Rice is a particular favourite. Again, extremely cheap. These things are really cheap. You've got potatoes and your rice, extremely cheap per calorie. So that's your more complex carbs. Also vegetables, you're talking about your carrots and your peas. They're also good sources of complex carbs. And on that, of course, even though vegetables don't contribute a lot to your calorific nutrient ratio, your ratio between carbohydrates, fat and protein, because they just don't contain many calories, so they don't affect that ratio a lot. You still want to be eating loads of vegetables because they're a good source of minerals which you don't really get from your fruits and from your potatoes and that kind of thing. The other source of complex carbs. So you need to be eating lots of fruit, lots of complex carbs from those things I mentioned, and lots of vegetables as well, and that gives you loads of vitamins, loads of minerals, and keeps you kind of running optimally. There's kind of a bit of a debate as to kind of how much fruit you should eat, what kind of ratios of your simple carbs to the more complex carbs should be. I should also mention, I guess, that refined carbohydrates often get kind of a bad rap because a lot of the source of simple carbohydrates, at least, are from processed foods in kind of the Western diet. And so what happens is that people say cut down on those things, whereas what you really should be doing is cutting down on the processed food. So your table sugar and your sucrose, your table sugar, which is in your cakes and all that kind of thing, is obviously a source of simple carbs, but you don't want to be getting your simple carbs from that source. You want to be getting it from fruit. You want to be getting it from whole food, where it does your body good instead of harm. Because of course it still has all of the nutrients and all the fibre and all that stuff intact. So there we go. And there's some debate on what ratio you should eat these things in. I've heard things from 30% of calories by fruit right up to 95% of calories by fruit, and people have certainly done that. And I think kind of reading a lot about this and people's experiences, I think you kind of get the insight that the higher the amount of fruit you're eating, so the more your simple carbs you're eating, the more active you need to be to kind of just kind of flourish on that. So it's not, if you take an overweight guy who's just kind of starting this kind of thing, you don't want to be smashing in tons and tons of fruit because it just won't really work for you. If you're overweight and you're not active, you need to be kind of fairly active if you're going to consume high amounts of fruit, because that's you digest it very quickly. That sugar gets into your bloodstream very quickly, and you need to be kind of burning it off. So you need to be quite active and not sedentary. So that's where your kind of more complex carbs come in. Obviously, you need some of those anyway, but the more kind of sedentary you are, I believe that you probably should have more of a percentage of those. If you read the 80-10-10 book by Doug Graham, he says the caloric-nutrient ratio should be 80% carbs, 10 protein, 10 fat, and I think that does seem to be very optimal for the majority of people. If you go for the pure fruitarian crowd, you're looking at 95.5, which is probably the upper limit, so 90 is probably the upper limit. I think a lot of people say 20% fat's too high, and with your 10% protein, that gives you 70% carbs. That's probably, a little bit low, so anywhere between probably 75 and 90 is an ideal kind of place to be with your carbs, and those are like I say, I've just mentioned the sources of those things. So yeah, that's your and just one other thing on the vegetables, actually, I should say that a lot of your vegetables should be leafy green ones, because they are so dense in minerals that the human body needs and doesn't really get from fruit and from your starches. So yeah, leafy green vegetables, so we're talking your lettuces, and we're talking your spinach and your watercress and your kale, these kind of things, really, really good for you. You need to be having those, even though they don't contain a lot of calories in and of themselves. So that's the high carb part. Let's move on to the vegan part. Well, vegan, before I started this, I didn't even know what vegan meant, so let's clarify. Vegan basically just means no fish, no meat, and no dairy. So none of that at all. And it's quite easy to get most of the way there. You can get kind of 90% of the way there just by using a bit of common sense. You don't eat a chicken breast, right? And you don't drink milk, you don't eat cheese. It's fairly obvious, things that just eating cheese sandwiches and cheesy pizzas, right? You don't have those things. It's fairly obvious that they have cheese, So you can cut all that stuff out very quickly. Or at least, there's a psychological kind of part of that where, you always have a transitional phase when you change to something, and it might be hard just because you're used to something else and used to the taste, and you like those tastes, and it's difficult to move on to something else. But that aside, let's just say that you manage to work through those things, then to get 90% vegan is fairly easy, actually, when you just cut out those obvious things. What's more difficult about it is getting 100% of the way there, because at least for me, I didn't realise just how many things contain animal products. It's staggering, really. You don't really realise it until you start looking into the ingredients of things. So for example, let's say chocolate, right? Milk chocolate, obviously not vegan, milk, right? So that's fairly obvious, but dark chocolate sounds alright to me, but when you look at it, most of the dark chocolate contains whey or casein, or however you say that word, which is derived from milk, right? So that's not vegan. There are vegan dark chocolates out there, you can find it, but you just have to pay attention and kind of look for them. But like I say, it's just that it's not that those things don't exist, it's just that what you think might be vegan is quite often not. So for example, on my sandwiches sometimes, I used to have butter, but okay, let's have sunflower spread, right? So sunflower spread, you'd think, right, that's vegan, yeah? Well, vegetarian, yes, but again, there's animal products in some sunflower spreads. Not on all of them, you just got to find the dairy-free ones. Yeah, but again, what you think sunflower spread automatically vegan, not necessarily. And even cereals, you might think something like cornflakes, right? Cereal, cornflakes, how can that have animal products? Well, in fact, a lot of cereals don't, because they're fortified with certain vitamins and minerals, and vitamin D is one of those, and vitamin D is often the source of the fortification for vitamin D is often, I can't remember the name of it, it's lepocin or something like that, but anyway, it basically comes from the glands. The glands of kind of woolly animals secrete this stuff, and it's kind of, it's like a wool wax, I think they refer to it as sometimes, and they basically use that, and that is a source of vitamin D fortification, vitamin D3 in particular, specifically for cereals, and so that's often put in to fortify them with vitamin D, and therefore it renders them non-vegan. So yeah, surprising, a lot of things are surprising. You'd think they'd be vegan and they're not. So to get that kind of, you get 90% of the way quite easily. To get that last 10% is actually quite difficult, and you've got to do your homework on it and find out what products contain animal products and which don't. When it comes to health, that last 10% may or may not make a lot of difference. Personally, I've not reached the 100% vegan stage yet. I hope to at one point in the future, but I'm most of the way there. Whether it will eliminating that last little bit will make a difference or not, I don't know. But there you go. Obviously, in terms of health, you know, that's one issue. But obviously, when it comes to the environment and the animal, you know, cruelty kind of part of it, then I think in any case, you know, it's something to aspire to anyway, to go 100% vegan, because just for those issues, even if it doesn't make a difference to your health in the long term or the short term, you know, it's good to do it for the environment, good to do it for the animals. And so, yeah, 100% vegan is definitely something to aspire to, although it's probably not as easy as you think it is, because you have to really do your homework on different products which you probably think are vegan, but they're not. So that's the vegan side of things. High carb vegan. Yeah, that's it. So, cheers guys, I'll see you later.